Hello, Uganda. Good evening and welcome to the show On the Spot. My name is Patrick Amara. And now, the electoral process is soon taking its final bend as only 28 days remain till the polling day. However, the process to the actual date is coming at an expense. Violence against the NUP candidate is mounting day by day, while some parties are starting to see their hopes dim for desired political positions due to different circumstances. The most notable is the recent crossovers of NUP candidates and alleged attempted bribery of other candidates to switch allegiance and drop out of the race. Politically motivated violence, intimidation, and bribery of voters have marred previous national elections in Uganda, but accountability for such crimes has been very weak. And so tonight we'll be looking to some of these issues, and when we come back I'll be introducing my panel. And my guests this evening I have Mr. Job Kija, a political analyst. Thank you so much for joining us, Job. Good evening.
Thank you, Patrick, and good evening, viewers.
We have Nabila Nagai Sempala, who is a candidate for Kampala Lord Mayor. Thank you for joining us, Nabila. Good evening.
Good evening, viewers, and thanks for having me on the panel.
I have Ivan Masawi, who is a candidate for Youth MP in Eastern Uganda. A warm welcome to you, Masawi.
Yes, thank you. Good evening, viewers and Kamara and fellow panelists. Personally, on behalf of the young people, especially in Eastern Uganda, I want to take this moment to appreciate you for inviting us, but also the NGO Forum of Uganda for saying that he has been very transparent in covering the campaigns, but in also providing a platform to candidates to sell out their ideas and views to the electorate. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Ivan. And we have the Commissioner of NRM at the Central Executive Committee, Mr. James Kinobe. Thank you for joining us, sir.
Good evening, colleagues and Ndugu Kamara. Good evening, viewers, and I'm happy to be here to share the highlights of what we are going to go through. We're going through as actors in the field.
And let me begin from the very extreme left of my side, and that is beginning with you, James, because I have seen disturbing images and pictures coming from Mbarara, coming from Gulu, and coming from Fort Portal, where especially the National Unity platform candidate for the presidential race was manhandled in a manner that is so unbecoming, and that is, we could say, it's a scar on the democracy of Uganda, and especially now NRM is in power. It's a scar on the conscience of the country.
Do you mind if I inquire why these three? Because we're almost in over 100 districts.
It doesn't matter. I'm telling you that what we saw,
can you also tell us
about the number. Actually, it could even get worse, that even in one incident, somebody could even lose a life.
I want to respond to you by understanding whether it's getting worse in this city, and at first it was okay, and then maybe we shall discuss why when we started it was okay and what has happened afterwards. Otherwise, these three incidents you're mentioning are escalating even to many more cases, which also disturb all of us, including me. And I sometimes ask myself, I failed to get answers appropriately, because this evening I was looking at a page in the social media, which it was just posted, I think it was under Bobby Wine's page, where he was exchanging with an officer, I think either in Kataki areas, and the officer, he was telling the officer, why do you stop me from campaigning? And then the officer was saying, I have not stopped you from campaigning. We agreed, and your venue is supposed to be venue X, for you want to go to venue Y. Then he said, no, why don't you allow me here? I said, but when we have guidelines, we sit agree before the rallies, and we agree on the venues. Why are you shifting from the original venue negotiated by your team instead of going to the other one? Now, it's the first time I'm seeing a balanced clip which has both the accused and the accuser. But in most cases, most of your coverages always take us to the extreme end when it erupts. You don't give us the background. So unfortunately, some of us who are not always there, we only see the tail end, and when I see the tail end, it's ugly. It gets ugly, and it also hurts all of us. And when we get here, we want to find answers. What do you think is the problem? You yourself, who is always neutral, and your media house has been continuously moving with these people. According to you, what do you see which we don't see? Because we only see the tail end when the eruptions start. My understanding normally is, one, you can't clap with one hand. Definitely there must be one hand which moves to the other. So is it the problem of the security which is over excited? Is it the security which is biased? Is it because of the messages of the candidates? So it is very disturbing. But To answer your question, they are ugly, and I also don't want them.
Yeah, it's very disturbing and ugly. I'm going to use your words, but the only difference with the NRM is that you are not only having a candidate, but you also have an incumbent who is the commander-in-chief.
Yeah.
If the men and women in uniform misbehave, we expect him to bring them to order.
The NRM is a party which is in the campaign, which is supposed to access equal protection like any other party which is campaigning. And we have a deliberate way of how we do our things. I don't know, you take trouble to understand how we do ours and compare with what others do. But for the benefit of our viewers tonight, for us, every time we divided the country into sub-regions. When we're entering a sub-region, normally our sub-regions have 3 to 5 to 7 districts. Why? Because this time around, unlike in the past where the candidate used to go to every constituency, this time around the time is not enough. So we go to districts. So we cluster the region, the districts in a sub-region, like West Nile sub-region, maybe Gulu sub-region, maybe Greater Masaka, maybe Greater Mubende. And before we enter any sub-region, we always send an advance team of our leaders who engage the leaders in those districts, the DPC, the security committee, our campaigners, and we agree on the venue.
I'm still...
Wait a minute.
You wanted to not know what kind of question you're trying to answer.
No, I want to help others to understand, because for you have the information. I'm telling Ugandans how we do, and I want you to tell us how the others do it. Because for us, why you have fewer incursions with the security, we have advanced parties that agree. We've tried to find out and ask. Say, no, the problem, first of all, is that sometimes the principal arrives and say the venue chosen by his advanced team was not appropriate for him, he wants another direction. And yet, as you have seen the program, our programs overlap. You find District X, the neighboring district, has a candidate because there are 8 candidates. Now, the moment you make any alteration, it disrupts, and then if you have a mindset of defying what the other officers do.
James Chinobe,
why don't you finish? Let me finish my point.
A monologue that I should say with all respect that is relevant to the question of us.
Speak what you want to say. I'll finish my
point.
Because
I've said you have the commander-in-chief.
We don't have a commander-in-chief
He has not
in the
ceased from being president. Yes. He can still call them to order when
to
things
do what?
go
To tell them to do what? To tell them to do what? I'm giving you the procedures and guidelines given by the Electoral Commission, which govern all candidates. Some candidates choose to disobey them, and they get clashes with the security. They get clashes with the electoral officials. What do you want the commander-in-chief now to do when he's also a candidate? What would you expect him to do?
Because he doesn't.
To disband the army, disband the police, disband all the security agencies because some people are not willing to follow the guidelines? For me, I think, let's address the issues as we see them. One, there are elements of security people who use excessive force when they get such situations. And I entirely disagree with that approach because they are professional. What you use as a force, for someone who is deterrent, they should be proportionate to what you are handling. So we have scenarios of officers actually who go out of their way and use more force than what is reasonable to handle the situation. But we also have candidates who have made it their style. In the first 10 days, they were okay, and they were telling you the campaign doesn't have vibe. As they want to bring in the vibe, you see confrontations. Is this the type of vibe they wanted? I don't know. These are questions we're all looking for answers. So I'm saying there could be a problem of candidates, some of us who are candidates, but there could also be a problem of officers who are not doing their work properly.
Let me come to Ivan. Ivan, you are a candidate in this race. And your constituency is such a huge constituency, the whole of Eastern Uganda. And Eastern Uganda is comprised of, majority of them are young people. What's your experience so far?
Before I respond to majority of them being young people, I can't run away from the question of violence because the biggest consumers have been young people.
Yeah.
And since 2016, as I started as a student somewhere in Mbale, and the party where the Honorable Lord Mayor belonged to, as younger people, we have been majority of consumers of violence in elections. Even when you track Uganda's elections from 1958, when they had that legislative ordinance, come to 61, the DP, UPC 62, the UPC Kabaka, and all elections, including the 1964 to 80, where there were no elections, still majority of people that suffered violence in Uganda were young people. I've possibly been telling fellow young people that this election, even if General Museveni was unopposed, there was no guarantee there would be no violence. So, coming back to the issue of violence, violence in a state where people have a fixed mindset about how an election style should be, how it should be dressed, violence where we see a CDF comes up, and the whole issue of militarizing our Ugandan elections has caused a very big differentiation between where does the military end in dispatching or following regulations of the EC, and where does EC has monopoly and authority. I was not born when he was entering parliament, but I remember in 1997, where I guess he was part of the people who drafted the current Elections Act in 97, because when you check records, he was an MP then. I was not yet born. And I believe when they made that Elections Act, they gave the authority to the Electoral Commission. Electoral Commission, when it gives a candidate a right to be in an area, I don't know why the military again has a right to say, you're in this area, but it is us who will determine. Because the role of the police in this country is very clear. People are even, those of Vulnerable Nabil, I think, fought for Public Order Management Act to see that the role of police in giving authority to candidates is very clear in the law, and presidential candidates like any Ugandans in the Bill of Rights, I think Article 21, have equal rights to be treated in front of the law constitutionally.
Chapter 4 of the Constitution.
Chapter 4 in the Bill of Rights, both Article 21, Clause 1, and I think 29, have equal rights as any Ugandan. So, as younger people, and I don't know, we are only looking at presidential levels. I've got issues in Eastern Uganda at constituency level where someone in Bududa in the NRM primaries lost an ear. Up to date, he has no ear because of internal primaries of NRM. Similar incidences have been seen in somewhere in Busia, young people fighting for candidates because of money, and they have lost their lives. So,
okay.
As a young person, it pains, but it is systematic. I've told you that General Museveni was on one of the small TVs making an interview about the election. You saw that we can't be in an election and you're saying policemen each has 120 bullets in a gun. And this is the hope you're giving Ugandans, because we have a younger population that is desperate, but you can always contain them by being young people. Is not that they don't like ideas, but in an election, when you feel that your relevance, because you've been cut off by age, glucose, nutrition, and being radical is noticed, you don't use intimidation. The Honorable Kyagulanyi is not that his crowds sometimes are attracted because he's going to have a special message. Okay. But because of where the government systematic injustices make people feel there should be a reason why they block us from accessing.
Ivan, you have made your point, and thank you very much. You know, the young people are not just consumers of violence. Violence is meted against them,
and they are prime actors,
which is very
they are
sad.
prime actors.
And I even said one of the young people, one of them there lost an ear. Up to now, he still has no ear. It's not coming back.
So it's not
going to regenerate.
One
it's a gold case.
Died just after
that ear won't grow back.
He lost one in Gulu after the Canes the following day.
Yeah. I don't know whether you meant it was some hope, maybe it could come back.
No.
Unfortunately, there will be no regeneration. He's going to be a one-eared man or woman. But Nabila, Honorable Nabila Sempala, I remember you've gone through very ugly episodes sometimes where violence is meted against you in the field of searching for votes. I don't know what experience you have as of now, and what do you make of these ugly episodes? I mean, Honorable Chinobe called them ugly, that we have so far seen.
I think as Ugandans, we tend to delete our recent history. But even if you're going to replay the elections of 2001, 2006, 2011, you'll see that the scenes are the same. Besigye, the main opposition presidential candidate, is just a role. Get into that role, and what will befall you is already prescribed. So those people who think that it's new, no, it's not new, it's systemic. And I think because of our weak institutions, these institutions cannot perform their roles as enshrined in the Constitution. You realize that we go into these elections, but if you ask randomly and do a survey, even in Kampala, what do the voters know about the election? What is the Uganda Human Rights Commission doing? Has it really ever done any civic education? The difference between, voters really want to know. But if you look at what the Electoral Commission is doing, can it go against, or it just wants to perform? It's a performative role. Like say, give us our budget as Electoral Commission, because the round has come back 5 years. They come to Parliament and say this is our budget. But do they know what they're going to do different in this round of election? I don't think that they are. They've also started just performing their role. And we look at that vacuum where we have weak institutions that are supposed to play center stage in the electoral process. They are weak. They don't want to concede and say we can no longer do this. So they just act, and then we have these trigger-happy elements within the security. There are those who are trigger-happy. And I realize that when there's a vacuum and that chaos, the mafia system in Uganda has grown to a level that it cuts across political parties. It takes advantage of the vacuum left by the weak institutions that are supposed to take charge of the electoral process. And you realize that this violence is not limited to the national election. We saw violence in the NRM primaries. The same violence that we are talking about. So
you're saying there's a cabal or a gang or a mafioso that is running the affairs of Uganda?
Yes, and that's why no political party is immune to this mafia, because the mafia thrives where legality is not active. And that's what I see happening in Uganda. That's why within these political parties, you would say, okay, NRM people are safe because they are within the government. But this crying foul is the same. You see people who are saying...
Let me take this, Honorable Sampala, to Job Kija. When you hear a lady who is vying for the position of Lord Mayor, a lady who has been, woman member of parliament for Kampala City, a member of opposition at the higher level, stating to the people of Uganda that this country, there is a gang, there's a mafia, there's a cabal. I mean, Nabila is not just any other woman. This is a person who has who has been in the corridors of power.
Has been in the kitchen.
Yeah, he has been in the marble corridors of power. What do you make of that?
No, I mean, she has been there, and so she has lived it, and she knows what goes on, and that's what exactly she's telling us. But I want us to really look at this violence, and I want to agree with her, and also agree with Ivan, when she refers us back to 2001. But for me, I think we need to go back to the first election. I think it was in 1961. Now, Uganda's elections, if you track them backwards, you realize that they are inherently violent. Now, if I am to look at the past 4 decades, which I'm very familiar with, and my organization, we have really done studies on this, and there are 2 conclusions we have made. The first conclusion is that violence in every election is never resolved. So the violence that happened in the last elections spills over to this particular election. And really, to demonstrate that practically, I will refer you to the people that were abducted in the last elections. A couple of them, those that were arrested, many of them are still undergoing military trial. 5 years on, that has not been resolved. There are those that are still missing, 19. One of them, sadly, John Bosco Kibalama, his wife died in this particular election. He was abducted in the last election. We don't know whether he's still alive or he died, but he didn't have the opportunity to bury his wife. But also, if he died earlier, then the wife also didn't have the opportunity to bury him. That is violence, which was really inherited from the last election. But I hope
we're also cautious of the fact that violence in the electoral process is not a Uganda-centric issue. Because even the most democratic and advanced democracies, in the last election in the United States, a presidential candidate survived by a whisker. A bullet came close to his brain. And he went ahead to win that election. He's currently president of the United States. So thank God we have not reached that level. But do you realize that even other places, even the people we benchmark on, still have elements of violence?
You can't say thank God we haven't reached that level when Bobby Wine's driver was killed.
I'm talking about
in Arua.
I'm talking about targeting a presidential candidate like it happened in the United States.
But Patrick,
Gandhi was assassinated by the campaigns.
Just a few weeks back, we had the whole presidential candidate, Bobby Wine, clobbered. If actually, and I think really the police officers that were provided to him by the Electoral Commission need to be given medals. Because if those canes that rained on those officers, plus the other security apparatus around Bobby Wine, rained on him, because clearly you can see that he was the target, he would probably be a corpse right now. So you can't say that, you know, thank God it hasn't happened, when we have seen targeted ammunition towards him. Even in the last election, you saw it, I think it was in Kayunga or somewhere. Bullets actually went straight directly at him, and he survived by a whisker. We saw what happened recently in Kiruhura, canes, stones, and all the individuals that are involved have not actually been brought to book now. Now the difference between us and the US is that the violence that we are seeing here is systemic. Okay? The violence in the US is more by, you could even call them terrorists or whatever you may want to call them. But here, it is official violence, whereby the state machinery, the official security apparatus, the military and the police are coming with canes and guns, and they are targeting candidates and citizens. So I think for me that is the difference. And honestly, if I were to make a comparison, I would agree with Honorable Chinobe that in Uganda's case it is really ugly. You can't have the kinds of things that are happening to presidential candidates in this country, or even to other candidates even at other levels, and you think we're in a normal setting. So the point I wanted to make earlier is that violence is never settled. It is systemic, but also every election, there is an escalation of violence from the past election. I mean, people have been, you've been talking about the earlier weeks or even first month of these campaigns. Apparently they were peaceful. And I also had at some point the people of the NUP at some point saying, oh, you know, thank God that right now we are still peaceful. But what is violence?
No, that's not what they said.
You have people,
they said it's boring.
A minute. No. I mean, let's not go by sensational social media, whatever, yapping. Let's go with, for me, I'm talking about what I saw officially. I saw one of the officials of NUP saying, thank God, they have not yet meted out that violence on us. But what were we seeing? You're seeing people like Waiso Mufumbiro, who is the candidate in this particular election, locked away for charges which are not clear. You are seeing the entire campaign apparatus of Bobby Wine locked up, arrested and locked up in Lira, in Imbarara, etc. So it is not that this violence has actually been peaceful. Violence, we have seen the narrative online by security officers who were saying if so-and-so does not stand in the way of so-and-so getting a certain percentage, we shall crush them. Now, violence is at different levels. It can be in narrative, it can be in actions, etc.
Okay.
But I think for me, the more fundamental point I think that I want to make is that the reason we are seeing this violence continue to grow in our elections is because there are no consequences for this violence. If there were consequences, you wouldn't be seeing it. We have seen people shot. In the last election, we had people like Zebra Mando and others. We had the, officially we are talking about 54 bodies that we saw in the streets of Kampala, but other sources are talking about more than 100. The president committed that they were going to actually even compensate the families of people that lost their loved ones.
Let me go back to
we haven't seen that account.
Let me go back to Honorable James Kinobe. We all have a stake in this. We all are stakeholders as Ugandans, and we need to disable this kind of violence in the ballot. What do we need to do, John?
I think one of the things we need to do, for example, I was following my brother, and he reminded me that actually there has always been violence, though he does not bring out why it happened. You remember in the 61 elections, they had to cut people's plantains of those who participated in the elections. I don't know whether that was a conspiracy by the British government, which was now administering the elections, or it was our culture who are tolerant to such acts. You know what happened in the 1962 elections? You know that in 1967, even the elections were completely suspended. You know that President Obote then there was an assassination attempt on his life and so on. So I think the bottom line thing which I now pick is that there has always been that character of violence. The question is, why does it come up? Only that maybe sometimes the levels differ. But what we say, it's not healthy. Why is it that way and it continues unabated? The reason sometimes is because of the stakes. You find that there is a clash of interests of both parties. The contestants among themselves. I was in the Electoral Commission. We condemned many of those acts even during the elections of our internal elections, and some people were doing this to their own. Because you just imagine, we want to emerge as a flag bearer, but you're terrorizing the very people who are supposed to support you in the next round of elections when you go. So there is an inside element in our DNA, I think, which needs to be addressed. Unfortunately, we go symptomatic. Sometimes we mention this particular one. You talk of justice towards the aggrieved, but up to today I've never had any justice for Ryong, who was also stoned. When he was on duty, someone dropped a stone.
That is 1 out of 100.
No, it's whether you say you don't want numbers, you want incidents. But we are now talking about a police officer on duty who was stoned to death. Was it okay because it's 1 out of 100? We are talking about the element. Why should we have this? I think we need to go back, we are as leaders, and not condone it. The messages of we the leaders sometimes contribute to this. Just imagine a situation where we had Lakwena. Those of you who remember Lakwena. Lakwena incited his supporters, told them, it reminded me of the Majimaji rebellion, telling them, once I pour water on you, no bullets will take on you. You remember in Ukamara, they marched up to the area of Uganda, including a professor, a highly educated person like my brother there, believing that the bullets cannot touch him. And now I compare that with the recent story of someone addressing a rally, telling them, don't worry, you are 40 million people. The soldiers you see intimidating, you have only one gun each and only 50,000 in the country. You ask yourself, what is the message behind this?
Oh, just recently there was some people attacked the military barracks holding eggplants.
Absolutely. It's terrible. Then a leader telling people, as we are here, we are Bayekera. You know we are Bayekera. As you move from here, go as Bayekera do. And now you are telling the US supporters Bayekera, then the security is also hearing. And they prepare for these innocent young people, as my young brother points out. Kumbe, it is just narrative. Why would you use a narrative that endangers your supporters? Okay, so for me, I think there is a problem across the spectrum. We would use different approaches if we were conscious that we're not going to use the young people. My young friend here knows that the young people are not only victims, but they are major players. They are major actors, but unfortunately, most of the time, they are used as pawns in these games.
In your political game?
In the political games. Okay. So the moment we need to create leaders and sensitize them on the dangers that would arise out of this, and then conscious as leaders across the spectrum, I'm not talking about whether it's the NRM or the opposition, Uganda today has the opportunity that every 5 years you're going to have elections, unlike in the past.
Yes,
let me finish this point. So it's not, therefore it's no longer a make or break.
Let me go to Ivan, who is a candidate for the race in the Youth MP of Eastern Uganda. And you've heard from Honorable James Kinobe. What can we do to ensure that the young people are not used as pawns in the political calculations of the mature politicians who have seen it all? Because you fall victim And yet, whoever is going to win or lose the election in 2026, it will be courtesy of the young people, because they are the ones who will choose who's going to be head of state because of numbers.
The question you've asked me, we have been fed on the food that was planted by His Excellency the Ambassador here. Personally, I think at some point I never knew that such days would have come. So coming back to your question, elections, like any other venture, present conflict and interest. As candidates, we apply advantage and influence. Because to us candidates, you either have an advantage and you balance it with influence. The biggest cost of election today is that most people don't have both advantage and influence. I will go to the presidential election because it is attracting too many kings and suffering. Why you see the Honorable Chinobe now, like in his villages of Uganda here, where he's very familiar, is, for example, he will go to Mityana and present over 100 people who have crossed from NUP to NRM. At a cost, they left NRM where their fathers supported to bring in government to go to NUP, but return them, they need to remove from them clothes, give them new clothes, shirts, lunch, at a cost, yet they left for free because of they lost the influence. Young people in our era, we are not people who want to be ganged or enslaved. We want to work with something that first it should be engaging. We seek engagement, and engagement, people have judged the young people that they only engage on excitement. I don't think, I also get excited like any person below certain, but we also have engagement that is ideological, like they like to put it. The biggest issues that have arrived in young people is that naturally government has been out of their lives. When you look at the UBOS report, we have 5.5 million younger people not in employment, not in training, and not in education. Yes? These 5.5 million people, don't expect them to be so stupid to support NRM. We have 10 million people between the age of 18 and 30. When you look at the employment gap, still from the UBOS report, close to 1.3 million of the people have jobs. 800,000, we are all here in Kampala. I'm from Ududa. I was not born in Kampala. I've come here in her city to look for survival. And ever since I came to Kyambogo University, I never went back.
And so many other people.
And so many other people. Yes. I only go there because I've been a leader there and I have to represent them, because I find that that is my responsibility, my contribution I can make. So there are factors that drivers of young people towards certain positions need to be addressed. The reasons why the cost of someone being an MP also goes high all comes down to governance. Governance is systematic. When institutions fail, it means the government has also failed. You can't say Electoral Commission is so weak and you said the government is so strong. Electoral Commission is just behaving weak, just like any weak institution you see in this country. Don't think that people who are ever criticizing Justice Byabakama, he's also happy knowing he's doing something which is very strong. So, coming back to where do young people need to be positioned in a free violence, you need to have a good heart. You can't give what you don't have. I've told you, General Museveni promised. You can promise peace by telling people where they should work, but you don't promise peace by saying we have bullets, we have guns. The Honorable Kyagulanyi, like my father here said, has also contributed maybe to degenerating the conversation of how a presidential candidate should address in an election where you are advocating for a peaceful election. But the Honorable Kyagulanyi is a making of the very government. I have not seen any other government. Maybe on this panel, some of you have seen. I've only seen this one. I've also ever been caned by this very government. You can't expect me that I will be very unique in a, what yet have been, charity has something to start with. The charity starting from home has an influence that creates. So addressing the role of young people in a safe and free election starts systematically with government itself, organizing free and fair elections. Free and fair elections don't have military at the center. They don't have police. They don't have money. They don't have ballots. President Museveni himself was very clear, I think, that they stole his votes, 2 million votes. So those are the elections we are in, that even an incumbent sees that they are irregular. He lost, and the Electoral Commission is very strong. He reappointed it, gave it another term.
Thank you, Ivan. Thank you, Ivan. You made your point. And let me also pick it up, the issue of President Museveni, which was being covered also here by NTV tonight, our news bulletin. You know, talking about he was rigged of over 1 million votes. And
2.7 million votes.
2.7 million votes were rigged. He's on record having said that. And yet, the same Electoral Commission is handling this election. If the incumbent and the winner of the election is also crying foul over the system, then we are really cooked, aren't we, Nabila?
What I can say, if there is insecurity, even if it's in a neighborhood, no one is safe. There is no one who is safe when it's not safe for others. And that's why I say, if there is violence in election, it will spill over. And that's why those people who are in NRM and we are looking at violence in the general elections and thinking it will never come home within the party, 2026 has showed them that no one is safe when there is violence in election. At least now we are at par. When you have this conversation, someone will say, oh, you can't imagine what I went through in the primaries. They bought these people. We were beaten. There was money. So everyone is now a victim of electoral violence. I'll say this, that sometimes I forget, because sometimes it's easier, trauma-wise, to forget some of the things you've gone through. 2021, I spent 2 weeks in Alfenya. Yes, I did.
That torture place?
Yes. I spent 2 weeks in Alfenya. I was with Chagulanyi Bobby Wine, who spent 4 days there. And, oh yes, I did. So maybe we've become like, maybe we brace for it when elections come, because we expect it. And like I said, because it's systemic, maybe it has come full circle by affecting the NRM internally. Maybe in 2026, Parliament is going to address this, because it has affected everyone, including those who are in the ruling party. When we see what is happening, I think my consultant here talked about the US. You know very well that Trump introduced militias that overran the legislature. That was crazy. Actually, Uganda has not reached that level. Up to now, those people have not been brought to book. So that means...
And guess what? 4 years later, he's given an overwhelming mandate by the people.
Yes.
So he's somehow vindicated that he's the right guy to lead in a democratic system.
Yes. Now, that's why I can say the whole world is at the beginning of redefining what the democratic process should be, because we don't have any role models anymore. The US was the standard. It's no longer a standard, actually. So what we are seeing is, like, what I can say is that democracy is sophisticated intrigue. African people, by nature, we are communal people. And we settled things as a community. So this sophisticated intrigue that was imported, actually, His Excellency, the ambassador, was talking about how come there's been violence since the beginning of our independence. It's because I think our immune system, our community spirit, and our leadership didn't recognize this thing. Because, like I say, democracy equals intrigue internally. Yes. Outside, it's sold as this perfect thing. But if you participate, I think many of our viewers maybe have watched House of Cards, that series. It goes to demonstrate that elections, it's intrigue, who undercuts who behind the scenes.
Honorable Nabila, I'm inclined to even think beyond Uganda and to other countries, Job. When she talks about probably we are not ready there for something called democracy. Countries that have prospered and we are benchmarking with them like China, actually it's not a democracy. When you look at countries in the Middle East,
they don't have that full-blown democracy.
In the United Arab Emirates or in Dubai, they are moving far ahead. It's not democracy. Or even in the region, I'm told there are some countries that may appear quasi-democratic, but they are not.
They're economically better.
Before Job comes on, you realize that people in the US, most people don't know that the candidates we look at in the US, the Democrats and the Republicans, they are independent candidates who are never heard of because the system blocks them.
Okay, I want to maybe to open it even wider. Probably this thing called democracy, we are living a lie.
Well, I did as part of a scholars in residence program about 10 years back in Arusha, where we were interrogating this whole idea of democracy, the neoliberal mode of democracy that many of these African countries inherited from the West. And I think the conclusion we came to then was that democracy was failing everywhere. It was failing even in the US. It was failing. I think there had been a couple of democracies that had collapsed in Europe. But also that was the period of the Arab Spring in Middle East and North Africa. And clearly when we interrogated the different models of democracy that we had, we were at that point where we were saying that actually democracy wasn't working anywhere, even in the US, which then at that point, seemed to be more like the
cradle?
The cradle of democracy. It had started actually failing. If you looked at UK, I think at that point the Brexit, and which also they claim was rigged. So a number of things were happening. But the conclusion we made actually in that scholars in residence program was that Africa needed to come up with its own mode of democracy, which actually is built along the traditional models of leadership that we had back in the day. Our culture, because our cultural institutions were actually functioning so well. Uganda had a democracy here, which was really functioning so well. They had the Luchiko. This Luchiko is not benchmarked on based on the neoliberal model of democracy. It was there before the white man came here. So I think really as a continent we may want to rethink a bit of how do we want to take this country forward. And for me, that's why I have had one consistent message that, when you're talking about elections in Uganda, first of all, the NRM government has no capacity to organize a free and fair election. I'll say that because even the main beneficiary, the person that we have been thinking is the major beneficiary of this mess, is actually also now crying foul. As listening to that, I heard of that thing about 4 months back. I think it was somewhere in eastern Uganda where President Museveni claimed that he had been robbed of 2.7 million votes. He amended the 1 million that at Munyonyo and is now talking of 2.7 million votes. Yesterday he brought it out clearly. Because for me as a researcher, I've been looking for the source and there was no source. At least now I have a source that I can reference as part of my research. But for me, if you look at that 2.7 million votes that he's talking about, whereby Chagulanyi got 3.6 million votes officially, it means that Chagulanyi got 900,000 votes in the last elections. Okay? Now, President Museveni went further ahead and even explained how the 2.7 million votes that were bloated came in. He said 1 million was brought in, was printed on NASA, and 1.7 million came in through Dubai. It was printed through Dubai. And those ballots came in here and they were stuffed. Okay? And that is how Chagulanyi got 2.7 million votes, more than Museveni. Now, for me, I think that really takes us to a point whereby we have an electoral commission that he reappointed because he had that information before. reappointing this electoral commission, and he has allowed it, an incompetent electoral commission that can allow him to lose more than 2.7 million votes. He has reappointed it. So for me, the point is that as a country, we need to stop talking about elections. We need actually now to get into a national conversation on how we want to take this country forward.
All right,
we need to be asking ourselves the question, if this democracy is not working for us, how better can we lead ourselves into the promised future?
You made your point, thank you. Let me go back to you, Honorable James Kinobe. You know, 2.7 million votes. You know, the president is the fountain of honor. He consumes the intelligence. Everything, you know, the buck stops with him. When he talks about 2.7 million votes lost, we are inclined to believe it. But then when he leaves the same system to run, that is incompetent, that make him lose 2.7 million, then that looks like a joke, a bad joke.
You see, the problem with our debates here, you move as if you're almost touching the real problem, then we'll go to jokes. I thought, for example, if Museveni mentioned the 2.7, but the winner Bobby Wine said actually never won at all. Though he doesn't mention the number, and the other time it was Besigye who says, I'm declaring myself because you can't declare me. So these jokes have been around, and they are political. That's why in all contests of politicians, you never find anyone accepting that he or she has lost. The ones who come at the last. So for me, I think I wanted us to discuss some of the fundamentals we were picking.
Addressing the nation.
Well, I know I'm saying the jokes about the numbers. Nobody ever gets to know how much has been stolen from
what
him.
I'm saying, the president is on record talking about the number.
If you want us to come
as the fountain of honor,
you want to come you call us another time.
Who feeds on intelligence, we are inclined to believe that actually happened.
It is true. That's why President Museveni this time is the vanguard of advocating for the machines, which they are now testing. And I'm on record that I don't think they are going to solve this problem. These machines, we are having them around as a solution to vote rigging, multiple voting, and so on. But today they were taking people through the practice and how it works. And I remembered how it was going through the exercise of updating voters. We had these machines in sub-counties, which were supposed to have about 50 voters per week, and it would take a whole week before they even do what they are supposed to do. So there is that fear which happens. My young son here put it very correctly. Sometimes you use the words of influence, conflict, and the opportunity. Sometimes you can't have both. For example, areas in the urban centers and the city here, we may have the authority, but we don't have the influence. The people who have the influence are completely different. They are very young people who can have multiple voting. This young man can run and vote in all the areas and come back and you not do anything. You use the ink, they rub it off. So people are now grappling maybe with the ink, but I'm told some people have multiple even IDs. So it's a very big problem. So it takes us back to the concept which my brother is pushing, that maybe we need to reevaluate the issue of democracy. Society and conflict are partners in life. The way you respond and handle any arising conflict is what determines whether you're civilized or you're not. Otherwise, you never, you the scholars, you never eliminate conflict. You never eliminate interests. Whenever there is a clash of those interests, you saw what happened in Russia. Putin, to be so democratic, he had to play along by standing aside, nominates the president so that the 2 years are over, then he comes back and stands again. So these games are going to continue. For me, my worry is what legacy are we leaving to the young people? I want to own up the area where he says, I think we also failed our work in handling the young people. I remember when we were growing up, we had youth councils. Youth councils were training grounds of these young people as leaders in their own structure, because we had introduced young participation of all the marginalized groups. Those who were old enough, in the old parties, young people were not supposed to take leadership codes, roles. You are supposed to throw stones, you are supposed to do all the dirty work in the parties. And when you describe the youth of those times, they are identified by those acts. Okay. It's only during our time, but you don't want us to get to the root cause. May I still believe there was a time UID was preparing leaders. In fact, the remaining portion you see among the sanitized leaders in DP was the UIDs then. Most of the young people you see were sanitized, that those went through the youth councils. Our youth councils now are just as contentious positions, just like the adult elections. They also now manipulate, as I told you, people come with billions. So it's now a culture we are pushing. It's the high time. What do I propose? I think next term we need to work backwards. prepare young people to understand the concept of democracy, the way we have it. Yes, we as leaders. I remember in the past we used to have the mchaka and it was removed. Even by
civic education.
Civic education is no longer there. So I think we own up as a country who are now in the lead, that I think we need to take serious consideration that where it has reached is not manageable. People have seen soldiers carrying guns, but you have also seen in the opposition young people having toy guns. So now people believe the solution is the gun, whether you have it as an actual gun or you have it as a toy. That's terrible. For us, when we started campaigns several years back, we introduced the word kakuyege. Kakuyege means you go quietly and lobby the person. You remember those times when we started our politics. Today, these young people have invented a gari. So it is now violence against violence. I saw recently we have had the scenarios of drones using by the state. Today even opposition candidates have drones. The other day I was in Butambala. And the drone arrested was Chivumbi's drone. And he told me, no, I have more than one. I actually have a second one because even candidates, all of us must have drones. You see where we are degenerating to. I think we need to go down on the ground because democracy is with us. It's the only civilized way you can have a healthy contest. But we should sanitize it right from the levels where it is in the schools. Just go to schools and see what happens in the contest in the young people. The cancer is eating downwards, and as I don't know who said it, you cannot have an apple falling very far away from the apple tree.
Let me come to you, Ivan. Ivan, you represent a very big constituency in Uganda, the young people. This country is largely comprised of young people, and it is you who are going to determine which way we go. Can there be a way how you can galvanize yourselves and understand that you're not going to be used again as pawn, and stand for what is right, and know that the old guard probably they don't get it or they have lost it, so that we can now start looking at you. Why I'm saying this, when you look back in the 60s, young people then are the ones who fought colonialism. When you come back to the 1980s, the young people who went into the bush. So this generation of young people, we demand for more, we demand for better.
You're just right. History is always made by young people. They are just recognized later. Even him, I think most of his history was made when he was still younger.
Absolutely.
But today we recognize him as His Excellency, the Ambassador. So, coming back to your question, a president has too much to do with how the country's politics runs and the image picture that you plant in the population you lead. Military governments in Africa, I'll give you two examples because we have a guest who has been in Sudan as a commissioner. Exactly. When you look at the crisis in Sudan, was because of how the military was put in the center of how the country was supposed to run its affairs, and the same was in Libya. The current crisis in South Sudan, let's take Sudan as a case study, because me, I'm not like our senior the researcher who will talk of USA, UK, what those countries like UK who have over 100 parties are not my interest. I'll take people who have similar color like me. I'll take Sudan. The current crisis in Sudan is because of the habits of a presidential candidate, Omar Bashir, and the longevity. The more a presidential candidate who came by military tactics, use of a gun, they never came through an election. Democracy will be overrated under that presidential candidate because to him he doesn't see that democracy is a cure to the problems, or to the democracy is a cure to any of the issues that he may want from his interest. This is why we have always seen democracy here in Uganda. When people believed democracy was term limits, they were abolished. When people believed democracy was age limit, they were abolished. Even these elections, we have had rumors of them being taken to parliament and what. So, military leaders, like I've given you an example of Bashir, today the crisis in Sudan was sponsored by how he was seeing democracy. That today everything in Sudan is called military battle. The civilian government that was created in 2019 after agreements, I think, never lasted 2 years. And the generals had already gone by their neck. So a president has too much to do with the culture of politics. And the longevity of President Museveni has had both fruits and also had the disadvantages. Fruits may be there because it is just insane to say state stability has not. There has been state stability, and that can be a pride he can take back for him, that the state stability exists, but there is instability, which is again in state stability that you can't even narrate. Because you can't have a state which is secure when there are no elections, and when there are elections, people are killed, people are abducted, money is money, people are poisoned. People need to always, because accept it, an election has too much to do with our repetition and the internal characters. Because the way we conduct our election is the way we market ourselves to other countries elsewhere. That is how Uganda conducts its business.
Okay.
So, you asked me a question of the young people.
What is their say in all this?
Their say, first of all, is that they have failed to get a credible example from my seniors here in government. And we have the National Youth Council, where I'm also serving in Mbale, where I am positioned. When such institutions are malnourished in such a way that their significance and the roles are never achieved, we don't have credible nursery beds for producing credible leaders, because they learn from the long-standing bad and good. Actually, majority of our long-standing examples are now bad, because they are greedy, they are corrupt, they are surviving, they come towards the election, they are violent.
All right.
That is the image.
Because Ivan, you made your point. Let me come to Nabila, because for you are running for mayor.
But we are 3 seniors here. I think you need to give him slightly more time.
Which I did, by the way. Which I did. You're running for position of mayor, Lord Mayor for Kampala. This is small, sort of like an opposition stronghold.
Yeah.
Are you also suffering the violence?
Well, there's subtle violence. In any election, you can't say there are waves in the sea and your boat is in the same waters.
Yeah, social media,
you know, so you suffer the violence. Right now, you can say sometimes it's subtle. One, we have people tearing down our posters. You find, and you know, they are caught. Some have been taken to prison. Some candidates have taken those in prison. But I've caught some, and they are opposition, and I've just warned them. I say, you know what is this? You know, I can't be the same person taking our young people who are being used. Still, that's violence too. What are we teaching them? Because these are the same people who are used in the night to go and tear down your posters. That's violence. Number two, I see violence especially, and I want to thank you, Kamara, for giving me this opportunity. I think most media houses have some intense misogyny towards women. They don't think that women hold their own, especially when it comes to debates like this, and realize they'll invite the men, you know, for the serious debates and conversations. And then, you know, when they're having women, they'll invite you with a woman and say, okay, now you women now can, oh, okay. It's like they are patting you and patronizing you. And I think that is still something that we need to deal with, civil society, with the media. And I think, Kamara, as somebody who knows you invite some of us here, I know we can hold our own. We need also that. You know,
sometimes I'm very cautious. The last time you were here, you almost fought with Nandala Maprabi.
It is okay, because, like I said,
sometimes I'm taking another gamble. I'm like, maybe it's just safer.
No, you know why? I think that's also some form of violence too. There's violence within parties. You know that there's sexual violence? You've heard about it? People whisper about these things, but they are a hindrance to women's participation, especially young girls' participation in politics. You know, when you hear whispers that politicians, people in political parties use sex
as a
tool for young women coming into politics to access what? And men. So I think that we should be talking about that, because violence is not just about the gun and what. That's also violence in a way. The other issue would be that we should be talking about the monetization, because that's also violent. There's never been an election that is very expensive like this one. Number two, our people are very poor. Actually, when you go on ground, including Kampala.
Actually, all candidates are very broke.
In Kampala, you realize that even children are going hungry. There's hunger in Kampala.
Very expensive.
You realize that when you go in the streets, I never had children talk to me. I talk to children, by the way, and I enjoy that because I want to include, and so that their reflections on a campaign are also valid. And when I ask them, when they tell me, I tell them, do you understand what a Lord Mayor is supposed to do? And then they say, okay, you're standing for Lord Mayor. Okay, I think you're supposed to, ensure that there's discipline in Kampala. Then you realize that these children are supposed to be taught this in their primary school, civic education. Now we realize that it comes from there. Number two, hunger is violent. Our children are hungry in Kampala. They are in holidays, and when you meet them, they tell you, we are hungry. We want you to buy us something to eat. That is very sad, because when you observe that hunger is a main issue right now, poverty has reached a level where our young children in holidays have nothing to eat. And when you ask them, why have you not eaten? Where are your parents? They said, our moms have gone to work.
All right. Let me come to you, Job. There was because at one point you were still in civil society. There was that one point when you really came out so forcefully to sort of create a vibrant citizenry, to create some kind of civic engagement, to sensitize the people and sharpen them, so that when Ivan and company come to talk to the people, they find a population that has been sharpened, that has been prepared, that is has civic competence at a higher level. That is what we lack.
Yeah.
How do we get that level?
Of course, there are a couple of challenges right now with both civil society but also civic agency, and it is at two levels. The first one is the operating context for civil society organizations that are doing this. As we speak, all the organizations that have traditionally done civic and voter education have failed to get accreditation from the Electoral Commission. We are now seeing strange organizations. If you listed those that you know, right, I mean, you know, Sedu, you are part of the system, you know what happened to it, the state went for it. The others, I will not speak about them, but I know sometimes they come here and you host them. But all of them have not been accredited to be able to do that. So you find that this is going to be the first election that we are going into with the lowest levels of civic competence, with the lowest civic agency. Now, that civic education and civic agency, I mean, you remember we used to run campaigns like Honor Your Vote, Topowa, I Pledge Peace, all those were done by civil society organizations. And the idea behind these were that you needed to be able to educate a citizen to understand that your opinion is not the supreme opinion, that even the other's opinion really matters. In that when somebody presents their opinion, you should be able to accommodate them and listen to them and appreciate them the way they are. But at the moment, you have a very large young population which has never had any kind of civic education, and they are going to be the main participants in this election. So what do you have? That's why you see this localized violence is actually escalating, because back in the day when we were running those campaigns, we're even telling these people, you know, these are the qualities of a good leader. This is how you tell who to choose. This is how you should behave when you get to vote. But right now, as even looking at the demonstration that was being done today in Parliament, I mean yesterday, was it today or yesterday, of the BVVK? And the MPs themselves are saying actually this system is flawed from the onset, because they are giving you 3 ballot papers, okay, as they scan you. So how do we tell that actually when you get to tick? The majority of Ugandans are not educated. Many of them, they are given 3 ballots. They will tick their choice of woman MP, their choice of president, and their choice of constituency MP. They will go and start dropping their ballots in. They will drop the one for woman MP in the president's. They will drop the one for presidents in whatever, and at the polling station level, those are counted as invalid votes. So the mere fact that I saw a message from those that are being trained, the people that are going to be the polling assistants. They themselves are saying the TOTs were trained for 5 days, us we've been trained for only 2 days. There are issues even with their allowances. Now, the message they are trying to bring out is that even in terms of their own understanding of how this system is going to work, they actually are not competent to be able to conduct these elections. So if you don't have this level of education done even at the Electoral Commission official level, then what about the ordinary citizen that is going to participate in this election? Okay,
I don't want to run a show that begins on Thursday and ends on Friday. What's going to be your parting shot?
My parting shot really is that in order for us to get into a meaningful democratic trajectory, we really need to be... There are so many challenges and differences that we're having in these elections. These elections are not a do or die. Even after we are done with these elections, let's really accommodate each other and get into a national conversation on how we want to take this country forward. Because I know that there are, of course, there are lots that is going to happen. Already we are seeing people being clobbered. People are saying they were robbed in the last election. Again, they are preparing us for being robbed in this election. So I think all that needs to end with the 15th. And then we get together, all of us as Ugandans, whether it is NUP or FDC or PFF, and ask ourselves the question, how do we want to take this country forward? I pray that we can have a national dialogue in the next 5 years.
Thank you very much. Honorable Nabila Sempala, your concluding remark.
As a candidate, of course, I want to tell the people of Kampala to vote for me, but also to say that we need the Electoral Commission to borrow a leaf from UNEB. UNEB carries out candidates, like there are candidates who sit elections, but they don't task the candidates to man. We trust UNEB enough, or any other higher institution of learning, to say they are going to have their invigilators in place, they are going to supervise, they take the papers, and you wait for the results. How come the Electoral Commission is not confident in its capacity to deliver results to the candidates without the candidates being worried about what's happening with their vote? So I think when we reach that level, that insurance can actually save a lot of money. You can imagine in Kampala, where we have almost 3,000 polling stations. How can I afford 6,000 polling agents and pay them how much money? So one, the inadequacy of the electoral process is making campaigns very expensive and is making it very hard for us actually to trust. Why should I have these people when you already have presiding officers, polling assistants? Why do you need me to pay? So why do you, in the advent of elections, tell candidates that you can't trust us? We can't deliver good results for you. You need to even actually put this there. So I think we need to start maybe with the Electoral Commission. Can we empower the Electoral Commission? Can we have, cheaper elections by having joint rallies, gazette areas where you say candidates should have campaigns in these areas, and then come and participate. But now a candidate needs like 3 million shillings to have just a mini rally somewhere. So that's too expensive. So what I say is that moving forward, I think this election process of having multi-parties, individual campaigns for candidates who are like 12, and each one has their candidates, where's that money coming from?
Right.
So I want to tell the Electoral Commission that we want to entrust them with our vote, and trust that they will deliver the results without us being worried.
Thank you very much. Ivan, what's going to be your concluding remark?
Thank you very much, Mr. Kamara. Elections don't happen by accident. After the last election, we knew our next election is 2026, just that they will be on the spot next Thursday. Uganda, we now have a lot of educated people. We expect that we should do better. Civic engagement should not start after people have started being beaten. There has been a lot of monolithic and authoritarian interference by some actors in our electoral processes. we all love the military. People may think we hate it. There have been military men here since 1962. They are not the first, and they will not be the last. Even if they all died, we would still have more new soldiers in this country. Let's there be really partial respect for Ugandans. As the military respects citizens, I'm also calling for the citizens to respect the military. But the military should know where the barracks ends and where the uniform ends and where invitation letters start from. Because really, there are even MPs who are using military. I know one in Mukono is moving with military men, caning. He caned one of my good friends using military police. Sometimes we once said that the Honorable Chinobe and his candidate, they are very bad, but there are just some few demigods, small people like this, who also have bad hearts, that they cost whatever efforts these ones may be trying to do on the national level because of their few vices. So, on behalf of the young people, I will not be specific to those of Eastern Uganda. We call on the state, the Honorable Chinobi, when you meet General Museveni, tell him those bullets he's promising the police have. No young person wants to die. He's lucky he was not killed by Obote. Why does he want to kill us? So, tell him no young person wants to die. We want a free and fair election. We were immunized by him. I don't know why you immunize me and then kill me by a bullet. Why do you have to use so much energy?
Also send a message to the candidates who incite
the candidates who incite violence, at least you begin it from your home. You show us how you can beat your children and work on them violence before you preach it.
All right.
But besides that, I want to appreciate a national media group and the NGO forum on behalf of fellow candidates for the space, for the debates, but also for the transparent coverage. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ivan. And Honorable James Kinobe, your concluding remark.
Concluding remark. First of all, I want, as a campaigner of one of the presidential candidates and as a member of the mighty party, which is vying to have leadership once again, I want to assure Ugandans that we are going to do our best. We may not have done the best. You may not love us, but you still need us because the alternative is even much less than what could even contain you. So I appeal to candidates, starting from my colleagues here. Congratulations for having the time to share with us. Candidates out there, whether you're NRM or opposition, we need peace. We need to have this in a very harmonious way as much as possible. The security people, please help us, we who mobilize for the NRM, which is the party in power. That sometimes you load so much for us, and we spend more time in explaining things we may not even know where the genesis is. Use your professionalism, stand provocation. I tell some people, some friends there, that you must grow a hard skin, because definitely with this conflict, you as a part of the incumbent government, they take you to be accomplices to what we achieve or what we want to achieve, and therefore the wrath sometimes of the competitors ends on you. Let's have a very peaceful election. It's just a few days remaining. Uganda is much longer than all of us, and these elections now that we have, unlike in the past years where we elected 62 and never elected many years later, every 5 years we shall have elections.
Thank you.
Let's work, perfect it, make it better, address. These panels help us to pick the concerns. One major concern I think I've picked here is that we have abandoned the duty of having a credible nursery for nurturing our young leaders. We are giving violence. We are giving them road. No, they actually learn it from parents now.
Thank you very much.
So I think we have a duty as a party in power to revive the structures, because we must be honest, this is the only government which has empowered the vulnerable groups. But I think it's not enough to stop there. We should nurture them to be responsible citizens.
Ambassador James Kinobe, Commissioner at the NRM Central Executive Committee, I want to thank you so much. Mr. Ivan Masawi, who is a candidate for the Youth MP in Eastern Uganda. I want to thank you. Honorable Nabila Nagai Sempala, a candidate for the Lord Mayor race in Kampala. I want to thank you. And here on the spot, we wish you luck. And Mr. Job Kija, a political analyst, I want to thank you.
Wish luck to my candidate also. I'm standing in for him.
I was only wishing luck for the candidates present.
I'm standing in for my candidate.
Yes. And I know we have a good country and we're generally good people. And I love the passion that you have exhibited, but also the dedication and the civility that with which we have had this discussion. And I want to re-echo the words of the Chief of Defense Forces. He said, for those who have given much, I think he was quoting the biblical book of Luke, that for those who have been given much, a lot more is expected of them. Meaning the security forces, if you have the authority, you have the power, you have the instruments of coercion, they also expect a lot more from you. Good night, and God bless Uganda.